It started with a single sentence on live TV, and then all hell broke loose. Dan Orlovsky mid-broadcast, sitting in his usual ESPN seat with that "I've watched the film" confidence, looked dead into the camera and said, "Dillon Gabriel looked better on tape than Shedeur Sanders." Pause. Rewind. What? Because unless we all hallucinated Gabriel throwing a pick six, fumbling in the red zone, and looking visibly overwhelmed in his NFL debut.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
That statement didn't just raise eyebrows, it ignited a firestorm. Meanwhile, across the country, Shedeur Sanders was calmly finishing his post-game press conference. No turnovers, 2 touchdowns, calm under pressure, and a stat sheet that screamed NFL ready. But on ESPN, crickets. Orlovsky had decided Gabriel was the better story. And just like that, a new quarterback controversy was born. Not on the field, in the media. And what followed was one of the most heated, uncomfortable, and necessary debates ESPN has seen in a long time. Because this wasn't just about 2 rookies. This was about who gets the benefit of the doubt and who gets picked apart. Let's break it down. Dillon Gabriel's debut? Objectively rough. He came out swinging, literally. First series, pick six. Not a miscommunication, not a tip ball. A clean throw directly into a defender's hands, who said, "Thank you very much," and jogged into the end zone. Later, in the red zone, fumble. Ball security went out the window. He looked jumpy in the pocket, missed open reads, and kept trying to play hero ball like he was still in a Big 12 shootout. And sure, he had a couple of nice throws in the second half. Some flashes of pocket mobility. But overall, not a good debut. Now let's talk Shedeur. Poised, calculated, efficient. From the opening snap, he looked like he belonged. Read through progressions. Made adjustments at the line. Slid in the pocket like he had been doing it for years. Touchdown pass in the second quarter? Perfect placement. Game-winning drive? Ice in his veins. And, just to really drive the point home, 0 turnovers. This wasn't even a debate. It was a clinic versus a crash course. But Orlovsky, he sees it differently. And not just that, he goes out of his way to explain why Gabriel actually impressed him more on tape. His reasoning? The tight ends didn't separate. The offensive line gave him trouble. The receivers didn't finish routes. Excuses lined up like dominoes, and not one of them pointed back to the quarterback. And that's where things exploded. Because Dan's not just making a film room case. He's making a narrative. And in real time, fans, analysts, and players themselves could see what was happening. Shedeur Sanders played better football. Period. But the media spin? It was trying to make Dillon Gabriel the more impressive QB because he tried hard under pressure, fought through adversity, showed flashes of potential. Enter Stephen A. Smith. He was not having any of it. The next day, on First Take, he lit the match. "I've had enough," he said, slamming the table like he was lecturing a room full of rookies. "This is what we do now. We crown a man who threw a pick six and fumbled, while ignoring the other quarterback who actually showed up and performed. I'm sorry, but we are not about to start rewarding failure and calling it potential just because someone else is playing cleaner football and not fitting into a tired media mold." It was one of those moments where the energy shifted. Because Stephen wasn't just debating Orlovsky. He was calling out a pattern. A pattern where certain quarterbacks get all the grace in the world, all the benefit of the doubt, all that he just needs time. While others, they get overanalyzed, underappreciated, and talked about like they're already nearing their ceiling. And everyone watching? They felt it. Because this has been happening for years. Think about it. How many rookie QBs with messy games get described as gunslingers, raw talent, or unpolished but promising? Versus how many get boxed in as inconsistent, system-dependent, or needs to prove he can handle the pro level? And now, Shedeur Sanders is getting that treatment. Even after a near-flawless debut, people started comparing quotes. Gabriel gets "the offense needs to gel." Shedeur gets "we need to see more reps against top defenses." Gabriel gets "promising flashes." Shedeur gets "can he keep this up?" It's subtle. It's coded. but it's real. And it didn't take long for Twitter, sorry, X, to catch on. Within hours, hashtag let them play and hashtag Shedeur was better started trending. Clips of Shedeur's pinpoint passes were stacked side by side with Gabriel's turnovers. Memes started flying. Orlovsky got roasted online, not just for his take, but for what it represented. The media's blind spot. Some were blunt about it. If Shedeur Sanders was named Shane McCarthy, ESPN would be running segments on whether he's the next Mahomes. Harsh? Maybe. But not exactly unfounded. Because let's be real, Shedeur isn't just another quarterback. He's Dion's son. He's already had to fight through the media noise. That he's only here because of his dad narratives. The HBCU isn't real competition nonsense, and every other gatekeeping comment disguised as analysis. And now, even after proving himself at every level, the goalposts are still moving. He doesn't just have to be good. He has to be undeniable. Meanwhile, Gabriel, he can throw a pick six and get praised for how he bounced back emotionally. That's the frustrating part. It's not that Gabriel had a bad game. Rookies struggle. It happens. But the disconnect in coverage? That's what sparked the fire. Analysts didn't just cover for Gabriel. They elevated him over a clearly better performance. And suddenly, it wasn't about football anymore. It was about bias. About who gets patience, who gets praise, who gets the endless narrative cushion, and who has to earn every ounce of credibility. Even some former players stepped in. Richard Sherman tweeted, "The media does this all the time. Shedeur balled out and gets wait and see. Gabriel struggles and gets he'll figured out." How does that make sense? And that's the question echoing across every sports show now. What exactly are we evaluating here? Actual performance or a pre-written story? Because that's the thing about the NFL media machine. It loves a narrative. It clings to tropes. It pre-selects stars before the games even begin. And when someone like Shedeur Sanders comes along, someone who wasn't supposed to dominate, wasn't supposed to make it look that easy, it disrupts the system. He doesn't fit the usual script. So they rewrite it, downplay him, overanalyze, call his success context-dependent. Meanwhile, the quarterback who checks more boxes for what the system expects, he gets a safety net. And that's where this whole situation goes from football analysis to cultural critique. Because now it's not just fans noticing. Everyone's watching. Players, coaches, media watchdogs. Everyone's asking the same thing. Why is Shedeur Sanders being held to a different standard? And maybe it's unconscious. Maybe it's not malicious. But it matters. Because the second we start calling average play impressive just because it fits a familiar mold, while calling excellence unproven because it doesn't, what are we even doing? The NFL is supposed to be a meritocracy. Best man wins. Best game gets praised. But this latest ESPN drama? It exposed something uncomfortable. And now Dan Orlovsky can't just walk it back. The toothpaste is out of the tube. He tried to double down in follow-up segments. I meant what I said. I like what I saw in Gabriel. But at this point, the credibility damage is done. It's not about being wrong on a QB take. Everyone has bad takes. It's about the message you send when you praise failure and question excellence. Because fans can tell when the bias is showing. And this week, ESPN's bias was louder than any stat line. So the next time Shedeur Sanders walks into a post-game press conference, plays a clean, composed, professional game, and still gets overlooked, just remember this moment. Remember who they chose to believe in, and who they chose to doubt. Not because of the play, but because of the narrative. And here's the kicker. Shedeur Sanders knows exactly what's going on. He's not clueless. He sees the segments. He hears the buzz. You don't grow up as Deion Sanders' son and not know how the media machine works. This isn't his first time getting side-eyed by analysts trying to decide if he's for real. It's just the first time he's watching them bend over backward to crown someone else after he just outplayed them. You think Shedeur doesn't notice that Dan Orlovsky couldn't even bring himself to say, "Yeah, Shedeur was better this week"? Please. He knows the rules of the game. And he knows that no matter how clean his reads are, how smooth his mechanics look, or how mature he acts under pressure, there will always be someone in a suit trying to find an angle that makes it feel less impressive. That's why he doesn't talk much. Not now. Not when the flames are burning around him. He doesn't need to defend himself. His tape does that for him. His stat line. His composure. His patience in the pocket. The 0 turnovers. The clutch third down conversions. That's his answer. He's letting everyone else spin. He's staying quiet. And that silence? That's not indifference. That's power. Because what's happening here? This isn't just a media dust-up. This is a full-blown reckoning. The kind that makes executives nervous and producers whisper, "Should we pull that clip?" The kind of controversy that forces networks to ask themselves a very uncomfortable question. Why do we keep doing this? Why are we still handing out praise like it's earned before the game, and then stripping it away once it's actually proven? Why does a quarterback with turnovers and sloppy mechanics get treated like an underdog hero, while another one, who played cleaner football, gets shrugged off like he's some gimmick? It's not about hating Dillon Gabriel. Let's be clear, the guy's trying to figure it out. He's a rookie. He deserves patience too. But he didn't ask for this comparison. He didn't put his name above Shedur's. That was the media. This is about the system, the pattern, the bias baked into the way we evaluate players, especially quarterbacks. And you can't help but feel it. Because when a black quarterback steps onto the field and puts together a disciplined, efficient performance, the bar suddenly moves. Sure, but can he sustain it? We need to see it against real pressure. It's just one game. But when a white quarterback has a clunky, mistake-riddled game, it's, wow, look at the flashes. He's got that dog in him. You just feel like he's going to develop into something special. It's subtle, but it's real. And everyone's tired of pretending not to see it. Even other players are speaking out. Not in a loud, chaotic way, but in that simmering, coded, locker room savvy way that lets you know they've clocked it. Former QBs, wide receivers, coaches, they're all watching the tape and shaking their heads like, really? That's the take we're pushing now? Because this isn't about potential. It's about credit, respect, equal footing. And the way the narrative around Shedur is being handled, it's not just tone deaf, it's exhausting. Because when you dominate your debut and still have to fight for acknowledgement, what else do you have to do? Throw for 500 yards? Score 5 touchdowns? Bake a pie during the 2-minute drill? And yet, Shedur won't beg for approval. He's not going to tweet into the void or go on podcasts venting about disrespect. That's not his style. He's been trained by the best in the game, someone who dealt with this same media two-step for decades. Deion Sanders didn't raise his sons to chase validation. He raised them to take the field like they own it, and let the critics choke on the results. So Shedur is just going to keep showing up. Clean pocket, clean throws, clean tape. And every time he does, that narrative gets harder and harder to spin. Because there's only so many times you can say, but Dillon Gabriel looked good on film, before fans start wondering what film you're watching. And at this point, ESPN can feel it. The backlash. The side-eye from viewers. The "here we go again" groans. The credibility cracking at the edges. Because the audience isn't stupid. They know bias when they see it. They see the pattern. It happened with Lamar Jackson, with Jalen Hurts, with Cam Newton, with Kyler Murray. Always the same script. Can he win from the pocket? Does he read defenses well? What happens when the athleticism wears off? Even when they win, it's but. And now, it's Shedur's turn in the ring. But the difference this time? The backlash is immediate. The fans are louder. The analysts defending him are more unapologetic. And the idea of just letting it slide isn't going to work anymore. Because this isn't just about 2 rookie quarterbacks. It's about how we tell their stories. Who gets to struggle in peace? Who gets dissected? Who gets elevated? Who gets doubted? And what this whole mess has exposed is that the sports media still hasn't learned how to sit with its own biases. Still hasn't figured out how to evaluate quarterbacks without dragging identity into the frame. And if ESPN, Fox, NFL Network, if all of them don't start asking the hard questions now, they're going to keep losing credibility. Not just with players, with fans, with audiences, with anyone who watches Shedur Sanders slice up a defense and then flip the channel only to hear, "We still need to see more." More of what, exactly? Because what he's shown is everything you want in a quarterback. Maturity, mechanics, composure, intelligence. But he still doesn't get the crown. Not yet. And maybe that's the point. Maybe he's not supposed to. Because the media has always been more comfortable building a quarterback than recognizing one who arrives already built. But here's the part they forgot. You can't gatekeep greatness forever. And Shedeur Sanders? He's not asking for permission. He's just taking the field, week after week, and rewriting the narrative, whether they like it or not. Now here's the kicker. Even after all the backlash, all the think pieces, all the tweets with 10,000 likes dissecting every syllable Orlovsky said, he still wouldn't back down. In fact, on his next ESPN hit, he doubled down. Said Gabriel's intangibles were more advanced and that you can't just look at the box score. Oh really, Dan? Because last time we checked, the box score is the part that actually wins the game. At that point, it didn't feel like he was analyzing quarterback play anymore. It felt like he was trying to manifest a storyline. One where Dillon Gabriel was secretly the chosen one, just misunderstood. And Shedeur Sanders? Merely a nice surprise. A fluke. Something to be cautiously optimistic about, but never fully trust. It was like watching someone trying to bend the facts until they matched their preseason notes. This guy is supposed to be a sleeper, and now he has to be, even if reality says otherwise. And that's when the audience started putting their foot down. This wasn't just a hot take anymore. It was a microcosm of something bigger, something football fans, especially black fans and black athletes, have been seeing for years. This idea that quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders, black, confident, unfiltered, branded on their own terms, have to overperform just to be considered legit, while others are handed benefit after benefit on a silver platter laced with excuses. You want receipts? We've got plenty. Remember how Lamar Jackson had to beg analysts to call him a quarterback in college, despite obliterating defenses every week. Or how Justin Fields was labeled lazy in pre-draft scouting reports based on nothing but coded language. Meanwhile, guys like Zach Wilson were getting praised for arm talent while throwing to ghosts in New York. And now we're watching the exact same script, just with different actors. Shedeur's calm, intelligent, mistake-free debut? Not enough. But Gabriel's 2-turnover scramble fest? Exciting potential. Give me a break. This isn't about hating Dillon Gabriel. Nobody's rooting against the guy. But this isn't about him. It's about the lens we're looking through. The one that seems to squint a little harder when the quarterback doesn't come from a blue blood program. Or worse, doesn't fit the prototype that's been fed to NFL audiences for decades. And you could feel the shift when other analysts started speaking up. Ryan Clark called it narrative-driven nonsense. Kimberly A. Martin asked why we were bending over backwards to praise a quarterback who didn't deliver when it counted. Even Marcus Spears, Mr. Cowboy himself, got on live TV and said flat out, Shedeur was better. Period. You can have potential, but don't pretend it outshines production. Suddenly, Dan looked isolated. The lone defender of a crumbling take. And instead of stepping back, re-evaluating, and maybe, just maybe, giving credit where it was due, he kept going. Gabriel processes quicker. His mechanics are cleaner. He's doing more with less. Cool story. But it doesn't erase the actual game. It doesn't erase the pick six that changed momentum. It doesn't erase the fumble in scoring position. It doesn't erase the missed opportunities and the rattled body language. And most importantly, it doesn't erase the fact that Shedeur delivered. He didn't just manage the game. He owned it. On a team with moderate expectations, against a pro-level defense. With all the pressure of being Deion Sanders' son breathing down his neck, he didn't flinch. He showed up like a quarterback who's been here before. Like someone who knows what leadership looks like. Like someone who doesn't need a narrative because the numbers, the presence, and the execution already speak for themselves. But the media coverage? Still tried to reframe it, downplay it, overthink it, nitpick it. Let's see how he handles adversity. Let's wait until he faces a tougher pass rush. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. No, let's not. Let's not keep holding a magnifying glass to some players while handing others a telescope that sees only promise. And here's the most infuriating part. Shedeur knows this game. He's not naive. He's been in the spotlight his whole life. He's heard the whispers, the nepotism nonsense, the he's only here because of his dad talking points. And yet, he still shows up, plays clean, stays composed, does the interviews, doesn't take the bait. And still, the media tries to make him prove it again. Why? Because he doesn't fit their mold. He didn't come from Alabama or Ohio State. He came from Jackson State, from Boulder, from a program rebuilt by swagger and substance, not by NFL pipelines and recruiting clout. And that's what this whole controversy exposed. The truth is, a lot of people in the media don't know what to do when the usual formulas don't apply. When the underdog doesn't look humble enough. When the superstar isn't playing for their team. When the guy who wins also happens to own his image, his voice, and his moment. They get uncomfortable. So they create a controversy out of nothing. They say things like Gabriel's tape looked better, even when every piece of evidence says otherwise. Because the reality doesn't match the narrative they've already written. But guess what? The tape doesn't lie. And fans? They're not buying a spin anymore. They're watching the games. They're reading between the lines. They're calling out the double standards, the inconsistencies, the subtle shade. And the louder they get, the harder it becomes for media voices like Orlovsky to keep hiding behind film study and mechanics, as if we're not smart enough to see what's really going on. Because this controversy wasn't about tape. It was about tone. Who gets praised? Who gets doubted? Who gets treated like a future star? And who gets treated like they're lucky to be there? And if the football world doesn't reckon with that, it's going to keep losing credibility with the very audience it claims to serve. So here's where we land. Shedeur Sanders doesn't need your approval. He's going to keep showing up, balling out, and proving, again and again, that he belongs. He's already rewriting the story, whether the analysts like it or not. And Dillon Gabriel? He'll have time to grow. Maybe he bounces back. Maybe he doesn't. But what he doesn't need is a narrative cushion, so thick it blinds people to what actually happened on the field. Because when it comes to quarterback evaluation, the tape matters. The performance matters. But the truth? That's what blows the whole thing wide open.